The Abraham Accords normalized relations between Israel and 4 Arab nations, the first new peace deals in 25 years. No other president got that done. The press yawned. Then he pushed a God Bless the USA Bible for $60 printed in China, paid 0 royalties to the songwriter. To be fair, the Bible text is public domain, and Trump's team said royalties weren't owed, and many political figures sell branded merchandise. But marketing it to churches as patriotic while profiting personally raised questions about mixing faith and commerce. Trump's team said he was offering a product his supporters wanted, a physical symbol of national faith. They argued it was no different than selling hats or flags, and that the Chinese printing was standard publishing logistics. Trump issued an executive order forcing drug companies to reveal their real prices, the most aggressive healthcare price transparency action any president has taken. It saved Medicare billions. Then he started a fundraising PAC that spent more on legal fees for his own cases than on any election integrity effort. To be fair, PACs can legally spend on legal defense, and Trump argued the cases were politically motivated, but donors were told the money was for fighting election fraud, yet the vast majority went to his personal lawyers. Trump argued that the legal cases against him were politically motivated witch hunts. Defending himself was protecting the movement itself, because if they took him down, they'd come for his donors next. He ended catch and release. Border apprehensions dropped 93%. For 4 months, 0 releases into the interior. That's enforcement no recent president achieved. Then his administration separated thousands of families with no tracking system. To be fair, the policy was a response to a legal loophole that encouraged families to cross with children, and Trump argued it was a necessary deterrent. He also signed an executive order ending family separation weeks later. But years later, the government still can't tell you exactly how many children were never reunited, a failure of follow-through that even some Republicans called incompetent. Trump insisted family separation was a tough choice to stop the surge. He blamed Democrats for not reforming asylum laws and said parents who brought children illegally bore responsibility. The lack of tracking, his team claimed, was a bureaucratic failure of career staff, not deliberate cruelty. Trump made the U.S. a net energy exporter for the first time since the 1950s, approving pipelines, opening drilling leases, and slashing energy regulations. Gas prices stayed low. Then he rolled back over 100 environmental rules, including methane emissions limits and pollution controls on coal plants. To be fair, his EPA argued that states could regulate methane on their own and that the Obama-era rules were overly burdensome. But independent studies showed methane leaks increased and asthma rates in fence-line communities climbed, though causality is debated. Trump called environmental regulations job killers that handed advantage to China and Russia. He argued that American energy was cleaner than any rivals and that a strong economy lifted more people out of sickness than marginal air quality gains. He signed the First Step Act, bipartisan criminal justice reform that reduced mandatory minimums and helped thousands of nonviolent offenders return to their families. That was real, measurable prison reform. Then he pardoned or commuted sentences for allies like Steve Bannon, Roger Stone, and Michael Flynn, people convicted of fraud, obstruction, and lying to the FBI. To be fair, every president uses pardon power for allies and political figures. Obama commuted Chelsea Manning, and Biden pardoned family members. But Trump's pattern, pardoning people who were convicted in investigations that touched him personally, went beyond normal practice. Trump believed the justice system was weaponized against his allies. He saw each pardon as correcting a political prosecution. Not favoritism, but evening a crooked playing field. He moved the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, a campaign promise kept that recognized Israel's capital after decades of presidents kicking the can. Congress had passed the law 23 years earlier. He just did it. Then he released a Middle East peace plan that gave Israel nearly everything while offering Palestinians a state with no army, no control over borders, and scattered territory. To be fair, past peace plans also gave Israel significant concessions, and Palestinian leaders had rejected multiple two-state offers before. But this plan was so lopsided that the Palestinians walked out immediately, making it a non-starter for peace. Trump's team argued that past plans failed because they coddled Palestinian rejectionism. By starting with Israeli security needs and economic investment for Palestinians, they claimed to be offering a realistic deal. The Palestinians walked because they never wanted peace, Trump said. He renegotiated NAFTA into the USMCA, Better terms for American auto workers, stronger digital trade rules, and bipartisan support. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a real trade win. Then he started a trade war with China that cost U.S. farmers $28 billion in lost exports. To be fair, the Trump administration compensated farmers with 2 rounds of subsidies that exceeded the losses, so no farmer went bankrupt. But those subsidies were paid by all taxpayers, including those who didn't support the trade war. Critics called it socialism for farmers. Trump accepted the farmer bailouts as a temporary bridge, not a failure, but wartime spending. He argued that short-term pain was necessary to force China to the negotiating table, and without the tariffs, China would never have agreed to the Phase 1 trade deal. He signed the right to try law, letting terminally ill patients access experimental drugs without waiting years for FDA approval. For families with no other options, that was a lifeline. Then his administration quietly rolled back patient safety reporting requirements for those same experimental treatments. To be fair, the original reporting requirements were minimal, and drug companies said they discouraged participation. Rolling them back meant no required follow-up if a patient died or got worse. But patients and doctors could still report voluntarily. Opponents said it turned right to try and to right to disappear. Trump saw the reporting requirements as red tape that discouraged doctors and companies from participating. His team argued that patients already gave informed consent. Additional government paperwork wouldn't save lives, it would just slow access. He recognized the Golan Heights as Israeli territory, strategically important for Israel's security and opposed by Syria and most of Europe. A bold foreign policy move that strengthened a key ally. Then he withdrew U.S. troops from northern Syria without notifying Kurdish allies, who had done the dying to fight ISIS. To be fair, Trump had campaigned on bringing troops home, and the Kurds are not formal treaty allies. He also said Turkey would take care of captured ISIS fighters. But Turkey immediately invaded. Some ISIS prisoners escaped, and America's reputation for keeping promises took a hit. Trump's stated reason was America first. He'd campaigned on ending endless Middle East wars. He argued the Kurds had other options but chose to fight alongside the U.S. for their own interests. Europe and Turkey, he said, should shoulder the burden. He signed the Save Our Seas Act, a rare bipartisan environmental win to reduce ocean plastic pollution and fund cleanup of marine debris. Even environmental groups admitted it was a step forward. Then he rolled back the Clean Water Act's protections for half the nation's wetlands and millions of miles of streams. To be fair, the original rule was famously confusing. Landowners needed permits for puddles and drainage ditches. The rollback returned authority to states, many of which have their own water protections. But environmentalists said state laws are weaker and enforcement is spotty. Trump's EPA argued the old rule was federal overreach. The rollback, they said, returned authority to states and local governments where water management belonged. It wasn't anti-water, it was anti-Washington. Final narration. Look, Trump did some good. He did some not so good. Same as Biden, same as Obama, same as every president back to Washington. We don't need to worship or despise any of them. We need to see clearly, praise what works, criticize what doesn't, and understand why they did what they did. Because here's the truth, the Constitution doesn't ask us to agree on everything. It asks us to stay united anyway. Let's all unite, with facts over politics. Not left, not right. Forward, this has been Facts Over Politics. No loyalty, just facts. In a country worth coming together for.
Subscribe to Facts Over Politics.